Hey Fae folk, welcome back. So for today's video, I want to discuss the recent Bratz and Gentle Monster collab, and then going off of that, I also would like to discuss why I personally find that Playline and luxury collabs are just a little bit weird for me personally. Now I need to start this video off literally immediately with a disclaimer. This is not an attack against Bratz. This is not unique to Bratz. This isn't me saying that it's bad when Bratz does it, but okay when other brands do it. That's not what's going on here. I'm talking about the Bratz and Gentle Monster release specifically for two reasons. One, it's just the most recent collab between like a doll brand and a luxury brand, so it's just like a timely thing. And then two, it is like the collaboration that sort of made me realize and like helped me put my finger on why I find these collaborations a little bit strange. I am well aware that they are not the first brand to do this. Like semi recently, like within the past couple years, we had the Monster High and Off-White collaboration, which I will be referencing in this video as well. But we are mostly going to be talking about Bratz. So I did just want to make this really clear that I'm using this collab and like Bratz as a case study. So my critique does apply to them, but that does not mean that it doesn't apply to other brands. So please don't take this as like an attack on Bratz specifically. And then of course I need to give the disclaimer that I always give that these are just my opinions. You're obviously welcome to disagree with me and like have discourse in the comments as long as we can be polite about it. But other than that, I really don't have too much to say as far as an intro goes. So let's just go ahead and jump on into things. We are going to actually take a look at the doll first, just so that we know what it looks like, because I do feel like it'd be a little bit weird to be analytical about this release without discussing the aesthetics, I suppose you might say, and like the design and the release and just all of those jazzy details. So we're going to be going over that first. So to start off with, what is Gentle Monster? Maybe you're asking that. Maybe you're more in the know than I was. I did not know this was a thing until this release came out. Like I'd never heard of them before. But Gentle Monster is a luxury eyewear brand for anyone who might have been also in the dark about that like I was. And they have done a collab that is technically, like I guess you might say one release because there's only one doll, but there's layers to it. I'm going to explain, don't fret. As far as I know, there's no way currently to get the doll. I do believe she is like completely sold out online. And then the pop-up locations, which again, I'll be explaining in a little bit, those are over and done with by the time that this video is going up. So this isn't like an informative, here's how you can buy it. This is like a post-release analysis, you might say. So there are, as I said, a couple of variations to this doll. This first one that I'm going to pop up on screen here is the bigger, like, I guess you might say more exciting option. This is the one that I believe has been sent out to some people for PR purposes. So you get the doll. You also get a bunch of little accessories for the doll. There's like tons of bags, and I think there's a few pairs of sunglasses. And then you do also get a pair of Gentle Monster sunglasses. I believe they're the same ones that the doll is wearing, but like human size, obviously. So it's like, so you and your doll can match. That's sort of what's going on with this. And she does come in a big, fat, beautiful display case. All of that is, you know, fine and dandy, I suppose. She comes with this little like furry jacket sort of situation, but her clothing is molded on. Like her clothing, her like sort of robotic situation there is molded on, which I do feel like is quite important to note. Aesthetically speaking, I don't think that this is like the most stunning Bratz doll I've ever seen. I'm not going crazy, like, please take my money, I need this doll so desperately. I definitely don't think that she's an ugly doll, and I am sort of intrigued by the theming specifically, I guess you might say. Like again, the sort of cybernetic sculpting in there is really interesting, and I do think that that could be something that's fun to see on a Bratz doll. However, that's like if this were $20 tops, because like, you know, with one removable piece of clothing, that's what I would pay for this doll. However, this like variety of the doll cost $430 US. You can really see the luxury pricing, but don't worry, there was a cheaper way to get this doll, and that was at the pop-up shops. So in addition to releasing this doll on Gentle Monster's website, they also had 4 pop-up shops. One was in Los Angeles. That was the only one that is in America. The others were in Seoul, Shanghai, and Thailand. Why does it say just Thailand? Bangkok. Sorry, I don't know why it said the country first on that one. I like was looking at the You Love It blog, like with all the information about it. But yeah, so those were the 4 pop-up shop locations, and that was like the only other place that you could get this doll. And there you could get a different variety of this doll. So this one has much simpler packaging. It's definitely a lot less like, hey, display the whole thing, and more just like, hey, here's like the packaging for the doll. If you, okay, Reese, that's fine. She took my lens cap. But yeah, if you like just want the doll, there was this option for you. And you also do get a little outfit keychain, and there were several different outfits that you could pick from. All of that sounds super duper nice, right? Except for the fact that you couldn't just buy the doll outright, because Gentle Monster is, first and foremost, a luxury eyewear brand. You had to buy a pair of their glasses to then be allowed to buy the doll. It wasn't even like a gift with purchase sort of situation. It was like, hey, you dropped $200, $300 on our sunglasses. Now you can also drop extra money for the doll. Full disclosure, as of time of filming, I haven't seen anyone say how much the doll was by herself, like after you buy the glasses. But given the fact that the glasses are like a couple $100s anyway, it's not really like it made this more attainable. You know, it's not like you could buy the luxury crazy version for 430 and then you could buy the regular version if you went to the pop-up for 50. It was still going to cost you a couple $100s. So like, I am missing that information, but I don't necessarily think that that makes my critique invalid, if that makes sense. So yeah, not necessarily my favorite thing ever. And that's why I made such like a big point about the fact that she has sculpted on clothing, because I think that that price tag would always feel outrageous to me personally. That is just like outside my tax bracket for a doll release. Like that's not something that I am willing to spend on a doll, but especially a doll that has sculpted on clothing for the most part. Like, it's one thing if you spend several $100s on like a BJD, right? That is typically made by a small company using quality materials with like tons of articulation, and you can dress them and customize them. That's a different scenario. Paying for a Bratz doll with sculpted on clothing that happens to either include sunglasses or you have to buy sunglasses to get her for $400. I just think that selling a doll that comes with almost no clothing for that amount of money is honestly a little bit insulting. This is where the Off-White and Monster High dolls come in for me, just like as sort of a comparison, because I still thought those dolls were too expensive. I did like a couple of them, and I didn't buy them because I did think that the price tag was just like a little bit much for what you were getting. But at least they had fucking removable clothing. And if memory serves, they were $200, which means that they were cheaper than any way that you could possibly get this Bratz doll. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I feel like in some ways they were also more accessible because they were available on Mattel Creations. They were one of the releases, at least like the ones that I saw. I don't know if every single one didn't sell out right away, but there were at least a few of those Off-White and Monster High dolls that did not sell out right away. So like, they were a little bit more accessible, whereas with this one, I saw people saying that the Gentle Monster collab online sold out in less than a minute. And then unless you live in one of the 4 cities or you can travel to one of the 4 cities that a pop-up shop was like popping up at, there was no way to get this doll. So it feels like she's more exclusive and more expensive, and also doesn't really come with as much doll related stuff. So again, this isn't to say that like Bratz is evil. I'm just saying that even when you compare it to other luxury brand collaborations, to me, in my opinion, it does feel a little bit lackluster. And I think that's part of why they ended up, again, being like the thing that made me realize I feel a little bit weird about these collabs and why they are the case study today. And that brings us to like my analysis of this release, because full throttle, like I saw this stuff on Instagram, heard the price, went, wow, I'm really glad that I'm not completely obsessed with this doll because there's absolutely no way I could get her even if I was. And I moved on, like saw, all this stuff and was like, okay, yeah, like it's going to happen, whatever. It's not like a drop that I care about. I don't have to pay attention, but I couldn't get this nagging feeling out of my mind. So I pondered it and pondered it. And now I think I've come to a conclusion on just why I feel like these luxury and Playline collabs are a bit strange for me. So to start out with, I do need to say, I think luxury is like an interesting term nowadays. I feel like at some point a luxury item was something that was made with really high quality materials, perhaps rare materials, made by artisans or people who are very, very skilled, like something that's handcrafted and takes a lot of time and effort, or some sort of specialization to really like know your craft and know what you're doing. And so of course it's going to be expensive if you're getting this incredible, like nice, rare material that's like handmade. Of course it's going to be expensive. And I feel like that's what a luxury good used to be. And now I'm not saying that those things aren't true, but I do think luxury has shifted into being less about the quality of an item and more about the status that an item provides. That's not to say that luxury goods aren't high quality. I'm sure some of them aren't, but I'm sure that some of them are perfectly high quality. But even then, I would argue perhaps not high quality enough to be charging the prices that people are charging. And again, it's not just, oh, it's a luxury good because it's high quality handmade. It's also because it's something you can show off and get status from. Reese has left us. She was not interested in my disclaimer, but I do need to give a disclaimer with that, or I guess a couple. First of all, is that if you couldn't tell, I'm not generally a fan of just like the concept of luxury goods. I understand paying for something that is worth it. Like the example that I have to give is that I hate spending money on stuff. Like I like getting things on sale. I like bargains. I don't like having to spend large sums of money on things. But my husband finally convinced me to get a coat that was like $120 for winter. And it is in fact the warmest thing I've ever had. And it is really, really nice. And I am grateful that I have it now. So sometimes it is worth it to splurge a little bit on an item if it really is nice quality. However, the concept of like luxury goods, I just don't understand, because if it's like a super nice bag, for example, in my head, I'm like, I can never use that bag because it's going to get ruined. Like I spent thousands of dollars on this and I'm going to like put it on a table where like there's like sticky coffee. No, of course I'm not. So like to me, luxury goods almost feel pointless. And that is my bias, full throttle. So like take, everything else that I have to say with that in mind. But my second disclaimer is that even though I'm not someone who cares about luxury items in that way, I'm not judging you if you are, okay? Like me critiquing the way that luxury items sort of play a role in our current society is not a direct attack against you. If you buy something that is luxury because you genuinely like it, or you genuinely believe that it is really high quality, and you save up and you've got a piece here or like a piece there, or even several pieces like that you genuinely love, I'm not critiquing you, okay? Anyone who buys luxury because they genuinely find it worth it and genuinely love how it looks, this is not about you. However, I do think there is a very, very large proportion of people who buy luxury items not because they believe in the quality, not because they love it, but because it's luxury. You're paying for the name. You're paying for the fact that you can say you have a Birkin. You're paying for the fact that you can say your tracksuit is from Gucci. It might be the most butt ugly thing ever, but it doesn't matter because you're not buying it with that in mind. You're not buying it to be pretty. You're buying it so that you can show, hey, I spent all this money on this tracksuit and it doesn't even matter to me if I happen, to sit in a puddle or whatever. I don't know. I clearly never owned a tracksuit, so like that kind of got away from me. But I hope you know what I'm saying. I do think that a large portion of why a lot of people, again, there are many exceptions, so please don't feel targeted, but a large portion of people buy luxury goods because they are buying the status that comes with it. And that key point of status is exactly why I think that luxury and Playline collabs are just a little bit weird. To sort of like go off on a bit of a tangent here, take Integrity Toys for an example. Personally, I would consider them to be a luxury doll brand. They were never like intended to be toys, like Barbie, Bratz, Monster High. Those are meant to be toys. Like maybe they have collector releases, but most of their releases are supposed to be something that kids can play with. Absolutely, adult collectors enjoy them as well in many different ways, but like at their core, they're designed for kids to play with, right? Integrity Toys, not the case. They are made for collectors, they are made for adults, they are made to be really high quality items, and they are meant to be very expensive and very, very exclusive. So to me, within the doll sphere, Integrity Toys dolls are luxury dolls. Therefore, if they were to do a partnership with Gucci, for example, also anytime I mention any of these like example designer brands, it's not because I'm like, yes, Integrity Toys and Gucci, same audience. I literally don't know. I'm just naming the brands that I know, which there's not many. So I'm not saying Gucci specifically. I'm just saying if Integrity Toys was to do a collaboration with a luxury brand, that would make sense to me because within their respective fields, they're like on the same level. Integrity Toys for a toy is a luxury toy. Gucci for clothes or, other stuff is a luxury clothing brand. So for them to team up, it makes sense. But then you have Bratz and like Monster High with the off-white again. And that's not the case. They're not made inherently to be these designer dolls. Again, they have had collector releases, and I have absolutely no problem with that because it's on a very different level, right? Like $100 collector doll is not the same thing as a $430 doll that is like a luxury brand collab, right? Like those two are not on the same level. I have no problem with like normal collector releases, you might say, but I do just think there's some sort of dissonance between a Playline brand suddenly collaborating with an actual luxury brand, not just releasing their own collector doll that's a little bit nicer, but really just amping it up to 1,000 and charging this much money for a doll that is realistically pretty lackluster. And a lot of that does have to do with the price tag. It's not that I'm saying that, like, if Bratz had done a Gentle Monster collab for $100, that would necessarily still be a problem. But the fact that it's $430, I just feel like that's, I'm struggling to think of a word. It's unreasonable to me. Most Bratz fans cannot pay that price to get a doll. That's not to say none of them can, but I feel pretty comfortable saying that something that limited, that exclusive, that expensive is something that most Bratz collectors cannot get their hands on. To be fair, Bratz's recent history with collector dolls does make this point like a little bit wishy-washy, just because, for example, the Mean Girls collab was very difficult to get, but at least price-wise, that was something that was attainable for doll collectors, right? Like you might have to save up a little bit, like it might not be an easy, like don't think about it purchase, but it is something that's on an attainable level. Also with a brand that I think fit Bratz very well. You know, you can say whatever you want about the Mean Girls release. I think it was an absolute shit show, but if you just look at the fact that Bratz was like, we're going to make Mean Girls dolls, they knew their audience. They knew that that was something that fit, and they priced it at a point that was, again, somewhat attainable. The Gentle Monster collab is not that. This collab isn't for the average Bratz fan, or even, I would argue, for the more well-to-do Bratz fan. This is for the elite. And it does just bother me. Again, if you take the Integrity Toys example, people who buy Integrity Toys on the regular are used to spending $100 to $200 per doll, right? Like that's something that is very normal for them. And so while $430 might be more expensive than most, if not all, Integrity Toys, I'm not 100% sure because I'm not super in that world, but just say most for the sake of argument, even if $430 is more than most of their like releases, it's still not as far away, right? Like say, let's just go 150. The average like Integrity Toys doll costs someone $150. So then you suddenly have this $430 doll, and it's like 3 to 4 times more expensive, which is definitely a lot. I'm not trying to argue that, but it's something that feels more akin to how a Playline collector might feel about a $100 doll, where it's like, okay, this isn't an easy purchase anymore, but it is something that I can save up and I can manage, right? Like if you're normally spending $150 on a doll, $430 is a lot, but it's not necessarily unattainable. If you are normally spending $25 on an average Playline Bratz doll, $430 is likely out of your wheelhouse in the sense that it's not easy to just drop that amount of money. It's not necessarily something that you can save up for a little bit. That might be something that you need a ton of advance notice to save up for. Like the gap is just so much bigger. Instead of being 4 times the price of a typical Integrity toy, which is already something that like might be a little stressful for an Integrity collector, if you collect Playline Bratz, that is literally more than 12 times the typical amount that you would spend on a Bratz doll. 12 times. That's just not reasonable. So with the pricing and the exclusivity and everything, Bratz really truly has created a doll that was impossible and unattainable for so much of their fan base. And I just think it's weird. And then when you look at the doll itself too, it only gets worse because let me like provide you with an alternative. And I'm just going to use Prada as the example. Again, I'm not saying that Prada is like a perfect pair up with Bratz. I literally cannot even picture something Prada in my head right now. but I know the name, so we're going to use it. Imagine that Bratz and Prada do a collab. So you get one doll and it comes in a big case, sort of like the Gentle Monster situation, except it's all accessories and clothes and stuff, and the Bratz doll has a removable outfit. So you're getting this doll who's got articulation and like a nice face and rooted hair that's like a good quality hair fiber. And you're getting these extra outfits and everything for her that are also good quality with like embroidery and stuff like that. And she's $430. That is still something that is unattainable to the average doll consumer. However, at least it is something that is catered to the average doll consumer, right? Like, at least if you're selling this big, like, trunk sort of situation that comes with all these cool accessories and this Bratz doll, at least that's something that is appealing to doll collectors. That is like inherently something that would interest doll collectors. Whereas with this one, you're paying $400 for a doll that has sculpted on robotic pieces. Yes, they are kind of sick, but they really, really limit what you could do with the doll. They are removing the functionality of this as a doll. And in fact, she wasn't even really advertised as a doll. She was advertised as a bag charm, which, like, I do understand is popular and I do understand has a lot of overlap with the doll community. But it kind of feels a little bit bizarre to take a literal doll, not a figurine, not a plush, a literal articulated doll, and say, hey, you can use this as a bag charm on this bag, because we know that really doll collectors aren't buying this. So we have to advertise it in another way so that someone will buy it who can just afford to drop $430 on something, because it's not designed, to me, in any way for genuine doll collectors, genuine Bratz fans. And I don't even really know how much, like, as someone who didn't even know the brand existed, I'm not sure how much this caters to Gentle Monster fans. I can't speak to that. But it just really, truly doesn't feel like what doll collectors would pick if they wanted like a say in how a $430 doll would be designed, if that makes sense. I guess the best way for me to sum up my feelings is that I think there's something sort of inherently icky about a brand that started off with Playline designs, started off being something that was like an average purchase that's very attainable and easily accessible for the average kid who might want it from their parents, or from the average, or for the average adult collector, just like something that was easy to buy, right? Like, that doesn't take too much thought necessarily. That's not to say that like $20 can't still be a lot in some situations. I'm not trying to minimize that, but there's obviously a big difference between 20 and like 430. Bratz, like, at the outset, and even still to this day, are producing Playline dolls, and that's how they got their start, is being something that most people could manage to buy at least one of. And then to turn that and take that success that they've had off of these fans, off of these lovers of their Playline dolls that love their dolls so much that this was able to turn into such a wildly successful brand that is literally celebrating their 24th anniversary, which is a really big deal in terms of toys. Like, that's not something that happens to every brand. 24 years? I know they've had changes and like breaks and stuff like that, but the fact that Bratz got so popular and has such an incredible following of people who genuinely love what they do as a brand, and they got that by starting out as like an average purchase, an easy, just happy little doll purchase. And they're taking that and going, okay, well, thanks for, making us popular and getting us here, but we're actually going to release this doll that most of you can never even dream of having. Thanks. It just feels a bit like a slap in the face. And again, I do think it's different. I feel like it's very normal to be coming out with these $20 Playline dolls and then be like, okay, we've gotten popular enough, we have enough of an adult audience, let's release our own in-house collector doll for $50 to $100. I think that's normal. I feel like that's a natural progression of a brand that is getting popular and growing big and like has this cultural significance. I think that's fine and dandy and happy, and I'm glad that they're successful, especially because most brands that do that continue to put out Playline releases for people who can't afford the collector releases. But doing something like this that feels just so out of left field, so random, so not with doll collectors in mind, really just feels, again, insulting and icky. And that's just the conclusion that I've sort of come to. This just feels like something that wasn't for the people that made Bratz what it is today. And I do think that's uncomfortable. But that's just my take on it. As I said before, I definitely want to hear your opinions on this. Do you think I'm being crazy and like just a little oversensitive? Or do you think that I have a point? Are you also upset about this release? What do you think about the doll in like terms of aesthetics and all of that jazz? Just would love to hear how y'all are feeling about this, because it has definitely taken up a lot more brain space than I ever thought it would. Like seeing these images on Instagram for the first time, I fully did not expect to end up sitting down and making a dedicated video for this, but here I am. Gave me lots of feelings, not really good ones. I would love to know how y'all are feeling about it. But yes, that is going to be it for me. I do hope this was maybe not like the most happy video, obviously, but at least interesting and enjoyable in that capacity for you guys. I do hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night or whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.